Welcome to Where Hope is Found, a space where real conversations lead to real connection and becoming whole. We're your hosts, Gina
And
and
Tiffany.
Tiffany, and we thank you so much for tuning in with us today. All right, Tiffany, so we are just going to jump right in. It's
Do it.
episode one. Are you
I'm so
excited?
excited.
I am too. I am too. This has definitely been a long time in the making,
Absolutely.
and we're just really thankful and grateful that we've gotten to this point where we're able to be here and able to just introduce ourselves and introduce what this podcast is about and how we came together and how everything came to life. So,
Yep. We're just here to talk story. So,
right, and share testimonies. That's really what's on our heart is to be able to share our stories, to share our testimonies, and the hope as well as it is that as we go along, we'll be able to have others come on and share their testimonies of hope and just help to bring hope to others as well in the process. So here we are. As was mentioned in the intro, my name is Gina. I am happy to be with you all here. Tiffany's here with us as well. And we just kind of want to get into talking about what you can expect out of this podcast. So,
mhm.
what do you think we go back to when we met and how we met and kind of how things came about?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
It's a very fascinating story because when I first saw Gina for the first time, she actually had no idea who I was. I was just a question on a YouTube live stream. And it was during one of the most, oh man, it was the hardest time in my life. I think I was at the lowest point and I was seeking for answers. I was seeking for hope, essentially, and nothing was working out for me. I want to share that more in a future testimony where I can kind of go into it in more depth. But Gina and her husband were on this live stream on YouTube, and they were doing a spontaneous worship and prayer service. And I came on and I asked a question because I was dealing with an existential crisis, if
Mhm.
you will, at that time. Um, and so I asked on this platform and I said, "Hey, what's existentialism and how can someone like me deal with it?" And Gina, being a therapist, she was able to answer the question. I'll let her kind of speak on this a little bit because the answer that she gave me was a phenomenal one that made me rethink my entire life. So,
And I totally wish that I could remember exactly what I responded, but I don't.
oh, okay,
Word
well,
for word, I don't remember. I do remember the gist and the gist of what it was. So she asked, what does anyone know what existentialism is? And I kind of jumped in and answered and really talked about individuals who are seeking purpose in their life and seeking kind of the meaning of life and what their purpose is in this
mhm,
world. And the way that I answered it was saying that it can become such a struggle to understand what your purpose is in this world without bringing God into the picture. Like he is the
yep.
one who gives purpose, who gives us purpose, who has put us on this earth for a reason. And if we are out of relationship with him, it's going to be really difficult for us to figure that out and to know what that is. Does that sound about right?
That's almost 100% what you
Okay.
said. I think what I took out of it at the time was that you cannot find joy or meaning without God. And so because I was in a situation where I literally could not find meaning to life and I was very much depressed. I didn't understand why I was here. I didn't understand like why I was destined to, live a life that I didn't really necessarily consent to.
Hmm.
And like those were the kind of thoughts that I was having. And so when Gina answered that, and my background being, having been in a church at one point and leaving it because of church trauma, I kind of had a knowledge about who God was. And at this time in my life, when I had met Gina for the first time, my faith was broken. Um, I didn't find any reason to act in belief like I think I believed, but I don't think my actions really showed that I believed in a
Mhm.
God. Um, so the
So was it
conversation,
more of concept versus like
yeah,
true? Mm-hmm.
hmm, that was essentially what was going on, was that I said that I believed, but
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard to say that you believe in something and actually act on that belief.
Right.
Um, I think on paper it looked like I did, but definitely not in my mind, heart, soul.
Mm-hmm.
Um, wasn't wasn't really aligning there. So
Right. So when that realization came that joy and what was the other thing that you said? Joy and purpose, was it?
meaning.
And meaning.
Hmm.
When you were reminded that that comes from God, how did that impact you? Like, how did it change things for you?
Well, I think in a sense, it reminded me that there was hope in the future, because even though in that moment I wasn't feeling anything but numbness, I knew that he was still working. And you reminded me of it just based off of, the word joy had not been spoken at all during that time in my life. And I want to elaborate more on it in a future my future testimony video. But because of the church trauma that I was living in and going through and processing through, um, it was really hard for me to find joy in that suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So there is such a difference between the word happiness and joy. And I think like we misconstrue a lot of that in our society nowadays. Happiness being something that a lot of people are striving um, to get in their life, and I think it is associated to the idea of satisfaction, cheerfulness, pleasure, and joy is something that I wasn't at all feeling. I think I was like trying to grab onto happiness, which is like a feeling of content.
And it's interesting. Just gonna jump right in this at this point because I was going for a walk around my neighborhood when I first moved into this neighborhood, and I saw an elderly couple, husband and wife, who were in their 90s, still living on their own. They were sitting out on their driveway and just kind of enjoying the day.
Mhm.
And I was walking with my children, and we just looked at each other, said hello, and they just started sparking up conversation with us. And I will never forget the gentleman telling me, I said something about happy or something
Mhm.
about happy, and he was like, "No, it's joy." He goes, "Because you know what the difference between happiness and joy is?" And I was like, "No, like what's the difference?" And he's like, "Happiness is based on outside circumstances. It's
Yeah.
based on external circumstances. Oh, I ate my favorite chocolate chip cookie today. I feel happy, right? Or certain things take place. I got a raise. My son won his game. I feel
Mhm.
happy. Um, but he said, and joy comes from within. And
Yeah.
that has always stuck with me since that day. And I think that that is exactly what you're speaking to, right? Is that you were striving for happiness, which is temporary. It's
Mhm.
fleeting. It's momentary, right? But joy is something that we're able to access even in our deepest suffering.
Right.
Um, and I know that's going to be something that we talk a whole lot more about as we go forward. But I'm really glad that you brought that up because I think it's so
Yeah.
important.
No, absolutely. And I think that at the time when you had said the word joy, something about it resonated with me, because I needed to learn how to delight in my suffering. That's what joy is, right? So I think during that time, that was what I needed the most because I knew I couldn't change my external circumstances.
Yeah.
What I was
And
going through was not something that I could control.
right.
And it was, I was going through a whole host of things. Marital problems was one of them. It was big. My husband was reliving a lot of his trauma. I was reliving a lot of church trauma, and so was he. We came from the same church at one point, and there was a lot of healing that needed to be done that wasn't being done at the moment, and we knew that if we didn't have joy in that present moment, we were going to end up further into the hole that we were in.
Hmm.
Um, so I think it was such a blessing to be able to come on and get that word from you, from God through
Yeah.
you, because I knew that he didn't give up on me in the moment, like
Mhm.
I genuinely thought that he kind of left me for dead
So
at one point.
what you're describing is a renewal of hope. Like
Mm-hmm.
that word that he gave through me that day sparked a seed of hope in you that
Yep.
just caused you to start looking at things differently. And I think that that also is such an important point to bring up is how our perspective can change depending on how we're looking at certain things, right? When you were
Mm-hmm.
looking through, I always kind of talk about it as like the lens that we look at life through. Like if we're looking at life through a lens that's bleak and hopeless, that's all we're going to see.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I always found it so interesting when some research was done, like neuroscience, and studied the brain and areas of the brain that were either activated with during a time when a person was feeling anxious or depressed, and then it also showed the brain when the person was engaged in gratitude, and
Mm.
those two areas could not activate at the same time.
Wow.
Anxiety could not be activated when that person was in a state of gratitude, and that's powerful, right? Because it's like science is showing this phenomena basically, or phenomenon, sorry. But I think it is really powerful. It is so important. Even a small seed of hope and joy and gratitude can really just start to shift perspective. It can just cause you to see that small light in the midst of darkness. And that's kind of what I see visually when you describe that place you were at that time.
Yeah, that was exactly what it was. And I really resonated with what you said, that anxiety and what was joy cannot
And
coexist,
gratitude.
and
Hmm.
gratitude cannot coexist at the same time. It's true. I mean, you have to choose one or the other. And it's a decision that we need to make every single day. And unfortunately, at the time in my life, I was not going towards the route of gratitude. I couldn't find anything to be grateful for,
Yeah.
but there was a whole host of things
Hmm.
that I could have been grateful for. I just wasn't taking the time to really sit with it.
Yeah, and it's hard to. It is so hard to, and at a later time, I'm going to be sharing my testimony as well, where there was anxiety and depression also. And
Mhm.
when you're in the thick of it, it's really difficult to see anything outside of it. It's consuming. It's
Mhm.
consuming and it's heavy. Um, and it's really those people or things that are placed in your life. I truly believe like God just places certain people in your life or will place certain situations in your life to give you that glimmer of hope, right? Um, and we both have a story, long story, right, which we'll tell at a different time of how we came to know Jesus, right? How we came to understand that he is where hope is found. And that's where the name of this podcast kind of came came up from that space. it really came up from the space of our own personal journeys through life and significant challenges that have taken place and continue to take place, right? Because that is a guarantee of life. You're going to have trials, right? You're going to have challenges. You're going to have different things that take place. Some things that knock you down, some things that cause you to question, that bring doubt, bring fear, all of these different emotions. Um, and that anchor of hope is really, really so crucial. So in going back to your story or to our story, right?
It
You
really is
were
our story.
you asked that question and the answer was given. And when I was on the broadcast, I just saw the question. I was like, oh, let me just answer the question, right? It wasn't an individual's face or anything like that. It was just, yeah, a comment, right? And just or she asked a question, I answered the question, and kind of that was that on my end. Just kind of continued on with life and everything else. On your end, what kind of took place in the background, behind the scenes, let's say?
Since that,
Well, from
or
that point on until kind of the next part of the story.
yeah, the transition
Hmm.
was actually really it was surprising. I think after I had come to the idea of like, okay, well, I have to be more aligned with gratitude,
Hmm.
thinking thoughts that can can evoke joy. Um, my life started changing at a pace that I didn't even expect it to. I remember I was going through some of my journals the other day and reading the change.
Hmm.
It was like reading my life story and seeing my going from, oh man, I want to not be here. I don't want to be alive.
Yeah.
Right. And then all of a sudden I see the shift of like, oh, I'm I'm seeing color again.
Yeah.
There was a point where I told my husband, I was saying, like, I don't see color anymore. I used to see color. Things are just muted, like
Hmm. Like gray.
gray.
Mm.
And it almost like altered my physical vision of things. It was very difficult for me to get out of bed. And it translated into this after I had talked to you. It translated into, wow, I can get out of bed. I can start, seeing my life as though there's more at the end of the tunnel. And it
Right.
wasn't, nothing was perfect at the time. It still wasn't.
Hmm.
But at least I decided for myself that I was done constantly being in that hole.
Yeah.
And there was a decision that was made, which was very important, um, which was that I didn't want to be stuck in that cycle. And it does lead into, you know, the time that I actually got to see you face to face for the first time. That ended up being 11 months after
Yeah. Wow.
um, talking to
Which
you
we
on.
just realized before we started recording. We're like, what was the timeline there? I'm like, was it a month or two? She's like, no, it's 11.
Yeah. Yeah, that transition, we were going through a lot, it was a
Yeah.
roller coaster. And when I had met Gina actually for face to face
Hmm.
on like a Zoom call,
Right. It was a
it
Bible
was
study, a Zoom
yeah,
Bible.
it was a Bible study. And I came in and I remember talking to my husband and I'm like, we need to get back into it, like we need to rejuvenate our faith in to some capacity. Like we didn't know how far we were going to go, but we wanted to make the next step, and that was the next step.
Hmm.
And to see you online, you had no idea who I
I
was.
didn't know who she was at all. I just thought, wow, another couple is joining in because there's a whole group of us. I was like, this is so great. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all I knew at that point.
And the
Until it was like towards the end of our time together on that Zoom call that you're like, can I share a testimony? And lo and behold, this is what she shared.
And I said I was the recipient of what you had spoken. That one dreary, I think April, it was in April of 2023 day. Um, I don't know if you remember the question that came up about existentialism.
And I remembered it clear as day. I was just like awestruck. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was me.
Wow. I was like,
Yeah.
you were the one who asked the question? She's like, yeah. I'm like, oh my goodness. The realization for me there was because then she went on to say how life began to change from that point because of what she received that day, like what the Holy Spirit revealed to her that day. And it really humbled me and made me think like we just don't know who is going to be impacted by something
Mhm.
that we say. I had no idea. I just answered. For me, it was like I just answered a question. I had
Right.
no idea that it had the impact that it did. But when I saw her and she explained and shared that testimony, it really touched me deeply. It was
Mhm.
powerful.
And so I have a question for you, Gina. I know like you said you were touched by this testimony. So
Hmm.
I wanted to know what was the story that um went on behind the scenes of like why you want to start, why you felt it was prudent to start this podcast about hope.
Yeah, there's so many reasons for it. My goodness. This goes like years back. I'm not going to share full testimony, but just bits and pieces. I've always been someone who has had a desire to help others, and that grew into really wanting to help others heal. As Tiffany mentioned earlier, I'm a counselor. You know, that's what I do as my profession. Um, and I love it, and I love to just collaborate and meet individuals where they are. A lot of times it's in a place of pain and hopelessness. And in our work together, we're able to come to a place where glimmers of hope start to come in. And when those glimmers of hope kind of take root, it leads to change and beautiful change. And um that desire, in my own life, I went through a period of time of hopelessness, and that was in 2017, which I'll go into more detail at a later time. But that was my lowest of lows. And it was in that moment, literally my lowest moment in my kitchen, just crying. And I reached the end of myself at that time. I had no idea what else to do. And that's when I cried out to Jesus and asked him to take control. Said
Mhm.
I'm done with trying to figure this out on my own. I need you. And it was in that moment that I just felt just a warm embrace, like you're not alone.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you come out of this. And that's where my hope was restored, right? The reality that I was living in that time didn't have to be a permanent reality for me. Because I
Mhm.
would wake up mornings, many mornings. I was a mom of two at that time, and wake up many mornings and like, oh my goodness, like, is this what my life is going to look like from now on? Like, I don't want to be uh, this type of woman, wife, mother, all of these things, right? And and that's where my hope was rekindled. And it just led to a series of beautiful things, not so beautiful things, just a whole journey um, that brought me here to this place. So to answer your question about like where that desire for just helping others come to a place of hope, it's been through my own experience in my life, but it's been also through witnessing the
Mhm.
experiences of others as well. And just knowing, like I was just talking about this earlier, if it's something I was able to experience and knowing that that's available to others, like
Mhm.
how can I keep that away from anybody? You know what I mean? Like you just want to
Right.
be able to share that and to help others start their journey toward a place of healing and wholeness. Um,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
wonderfully put. And I think it's beautiful too. Sometimes when we're in our rock bottom moments, that is where the seed of hope is planted. A
Yeah.
lot of the times,
Yeah,
like,
a lot of times it's like that. That's for sure.
mhm,
That's for sure. So, in since that time, when Tiffany and I met face to face in that sense, our friendship and sisterhood just grew and strengthened throughout that time because that was in 2024, right? Where
yeah,
yeah.
it
So,
blossomed. We went out, got food, and had a little
yeah, we had a
picnic.
little picnic in the park. She and her husband were so gracious and hospitable and had the cutest picnic basket and
Yeah, we just made
that
Kima
I still
salad
love
on a
to this
nice
day. And I'm
table.
like, it's still on my on my Amazon list. I'm like, I'm gonna get that one day. True story. But since then, it's just been a beautiful friendship that has developed over time. And we never talked about starting a podcast together. So this is where we get to the point where like, okay, the two of you met, this interaction happened, God did something beautiful in revealing what he revealed. And, we were just building our friendship and having time together and having these deep conversations that we tend to get into that I
We'll
appreciate.
stay up
And
until like 3 in the morning.
yeah, yes. We call them fireside chats.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, throughout all that, we were just kind of sharing at different points um, what we're passionate about, right? I would
Mhm.
talk about kind of my passion for helping others, and um, it's a multifaceted passion. There's health, there's helping others, there's really it's wholeness. That's
It's
truly
almost,
my passion is
yeah.
is is wholeness in every facet, physically, emotionally, mentally, relationally,
Mhm.
spiritually. That's where
Forming a
my heart
complete
is.
person.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. And and speaking to Tiffany about like the things that she's been interested in, I know you talked about in the past having journalism be one of the things that you studied and you felt like God was placing in your heart, being able to highlight others' testimonies and things like that. And even in those conversations, still, it was not like, hey, maybe we should like get together and do a podcast. No, it really came in September. In September, my husband and I were celebrating our 16th wedding anniversary. And during that weekend, there was just so much revelation that came from it. It was actually him. I don't even know how I don't remember how the conversation came up, but he mentioned a podcast and I was like, because I had floated around with the idea for a while. Like, I don't know if I know
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
audience, you might know too. Like sometimes God will just place an idea in your mind or something in your heart and you're kind of like, really? Like, you want me to do that? Right? Like, I don't know if I can do that. So that's kind of what the podcast was like. It was like he would deposit it in, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm the one, or what that's going to look like and everything like that. Um, but then he made it super clear that
Hmm.
weekend. He made it super clear, like, this is what I want you to do, and this is what I want it to look like, and this is who I want you to do it with. Like we were driving back home and it was literally a picture of Tiffany's face that came to my mind and he reminded me of this experience
Yep.
with her asking the question and what came from that. And I remembered he truly put it in my mind and in my heart. Like there's more Tiffany's out there
Yeah.
who need hope, who
Hmm.
need to hear testimony, who need for you both to share, what I've done in your life to
Right.
to give them hope. And then that's when I literally wanted to call Tiffany right there. I'm like crying in the car. I'm like, I want to call Tiffany. And my husband's like, no, just wait. We can
When we
wait
had
till
a
we get home.
fireside chat, we talked about it, and
The next day, yeah.
yeah.
And then what happened in that conversation was like as I'm saying what the Holy Spirit revealed, I see her face like, oh, and she's looking at her husband and they're like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, something's happening right now. Like, what is going on?
Well, yeah, funny you mentioned that because the face that I was making to him is mostly because he knows that I've been trying to do something related to online content for a very
Hmm.
long time. I just was not, I I was being taken out of the corporate world. I had a corporate job and took took myself out of that because I did not find meaning in it. And I think that would have eventually led me back into the path of like I'm not doing this for anything other than just to make like some money for the time being, but it
Hmm.
wasn't like very good money to the point where it felt like I needed to be there.
Hmm.
So I'll go into this a little too. I was taken out of this corporate job in January. I loved my boss. I loved the people that I was working with, clients, all of that. But there was one day my husband and I went to a trip up in Canada, just got away from everything and did a nice like reset trip, which we
Yeah.
really needed. We really needed that.
We all need those from
Yeah.
time to time for sure.
Just
Hmm.
take a week off and go out to the mountains.
Yep.
Um, and so that's what we did. It was the end of the year around December like 25th. It was perfect for, like looking into the next year, doing like a New Year's resolution, sort of resetting for the
Hmm.
year ahead. And I was looking at my life, kind of doing a little audit, if you will, and seeing that, okay, well, I have a job, I have a house, and I'm very blessed, right? But what
Hmm.
is the next step? Like, what exactly is it that is going to actually give my life meaning more than what it is, what I have now? And I know that, I'm very privileged to have the time and the space to kind of get into wanting to add to other people.
Hmm.
Healing has also been a big thing in my life. I didn't know where exactly I fell into it, but I always felt drawn to wanting to help people. My testimony will go into it a little bit more, but when I was in college, I was also not just a journalism major, but I was a sustainability development leadership minor. And I was big into wanting to kind of like help the environment, all of this stuff. Um, because I saw that there was like a bigger purpose in life,
Hmm.
um, that wasn't just about me. It wasn't like I wasn't the center of the world. So I wanted to do something about that. And I really thought that that was going to be in environmental sustainability. And then God took me to a completely different like route. Um, we went into this, I started developing like this business for environmental sustainability and had a website, had everything going. The next step, I even had sponsorships by that point because it was a capstone project and I had a lot of people who were wanting to get invested into it.
Hmm.
And God sort of stopped it at one point and was like, I want you to think about it. And when I came into this was after I'd come into the church and I saw that there were um, so much more purpose to sharing my story and sharing where I came from and where I'm at now, because those are two completely different people. Um, my 17-year-old self would look at me now and be like, who, what,
Who are
who
you?
are you? And I really,
Same.
yeah, yeah, I think we all, when we share like some of the stories that brought us from point A to point B.
But wasn't 17 like just last year though? Totally kidding.
I wish.
Not sharing my age yet.
No, yeah, I think like I mean I would love to just go back and tell my 17-year-old self like buckle up. It's gonna be a fun
Ooh,
ride.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So I think like I would love I come at this podcast with a heart of wanting to see other people kind of come out of a life that's purposeless, that's meaningless, and find meaning in it.
Yeah.
And that's my intention. That's where my heart is. I know it's not going to look the same for everyone, but hopefully our stories will shed light into where you're at right now. And that's just kind of where I wanted to add.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so good. You know, everybody's journey is different. I'm always reminding others about the importance of their story, right? Like owning that. We all have a journey. We all have
Mhm.
experiences that have led us to be where we are today. And I think there's beauty in the fact that it's all different, right? Because that means that there's something that someone's going to be able to relate to,
Mhm.
right? Like someone else's story. There's going to be somebody who you can relate to and what they share and in their testimony. And that's why we think it's so important to be able to feature others and who can share testimonies that are very different than our own, you
Right.
know?
The
Um,
goal is really just to reach just one person.
yeah.
You know, like if this doesn't resonate with you, then it's okay to click away.
Mm-hmm.
But perhaps, you know, there's one person out there that needed to hear it, and that's where, you know, we just wanted to show up
Yeah.
and
And
see
show
what
up
it is. Yeah.
just just as ourselves, right?
Mhm.
With imperfections, with, bloopers, which I was telling Tiffany, that's a whole lot of that's going to take. We'll probably just have a whole episode of bloopers for you all to enjoy at some point. But I think that at the end of the day, right, it's really taking the opportunity to focus on the way I tend to describe it is like the micro things of life, right? The day to day,
Mhm.
the things that may come up that aren't, say, a macro level thing. It's not a societal thing per se, but we're kind of focusing in on that personal relationship with God, right? What that does. Tiffany mentioned, and she'll go into that in regards to church trauma and things like that, and how that can impact someone's relationship with God, right?
Mhm.
And how, because I had my own difficult experiences as well. And it really brings you to a place where you have to choose, like, okay, what I experienced here, is it going to make me turn away from him, or is it going to cause me to really get to know him for myself? And that's a decision that I made in my life when I was, you know, in experiences that really were just disheartening and disappointing in different ways. I had a choice to make. Do I turn away, or do I say, you know what, I'm going to develop this relationship for myself and see where it takes me. And I think that choice comes up in different ways, whether we have friendships or family relationships or different professional relationships, where we have these difficult experiences and challenges, and maybe, you know, things happen that you really would have not wanted to happen. You have a choice. Like, do I just stop trusting people altogether because
Mhm.
this person hurt me? Or do I allow myself to heal? Do I process that? Do I allow what I learned from that experience to help me in moving forward?
Yeah.
And I think there's so much of that we're going to be talking about, and how to hold on to hope when those waves of life just come along.
Yeah. And I think another thing too, like that's been a common denominator in both Gina and I's my story is the topic on grief. And
Mm-hmm.
there's been so much that has changed in our personal lives within the last decade. And I think it's very hard sometimes to move past that, especially when you feel like you're doing that on your own. And there's so many things that trigger, the feeling of grief. Sometimes it doesn't look the same for
Right.
everyone, and people deal with grief very differently. And we want to kind of touch up on that, how it's affected, our walk and our life. It's, I think, to find hope after losing someone too.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult, and I think that's something I want to share in my testimony. The only reason why I even came to God in the first place was because I lost someone that was very important to me. And it made me question my reality as I knew it, like where did they go? There's a lot of we'll get into like the nitty gritty details in a future episode, but like you end up asking yourself all these questions about the nature of reality. And at least I know that happened for me, because I didn't grow up in a Christian home or
Mm-hmm.
um, any like a religious home at all. I was very agnostic for a while, and I didn't meet God until the end of my college years. So
Well,
I did.
even in our stories, there's so many differences there, which is
Mhm.
like, it's just so amazing that
Yeah,
we're here in this place now together.
we're very excited to share the stories with you though. So
Yeah, for sure. And that is something that is to come. Like we said, we wanted today to be an introduction. We wanted to just introduce ourselves to you all, give a little background on how this podcast came to be, and forecast a little bit about the things that we are hoping to discuss, which we'll be discussing just a whole bunch of different topics. And if there's any particular topic that you're interested in us talking about, or maybe learning about, or whatever it is that comes to mind that you want to share, you can always just put it in the comments, and we're absolutely going to be reading the comments and taking your feedback into consideration and all of that. We wanted to make it as interactive as we possibly can, right? Because I think that that is also a part of it. It's a part of our testimony together, right? It didn't
yeah.
just end at a YouTube comment being answered. We
Hmm.
had an opportunity to have follow-up conversation and kind of have um, more depth to it. So
Perhaps you may end up on the podcast at one point too. So
you never know,
yes, yeah,
it could
yeah.
be, or we could do, I was thinking as well, right? Because on YouTube we have the possibility to do a live broadcast. So maybe we can do some podcast or some type of Q&A or something like that down the road where it's just a live thing and there can be that interaction as well. So there's a lot of possibility. We're just allowing God to lead in every aspect of this, right? The whole reason why we're even doing this is because we were called to do it. So it's going to be whatever he wants it to be. And we're just going to follow his lead. But I think we are good to end
I
our
think
first episode here. It's been a pleasure chatting with you as always.
you too, Gina. With our conversations, we'll like talk forever and
Yeah,
we forget like
absolutely.
we're recording.
I know we do. We just feel like we're just having our regular chats, which is great. That makes us feel it feels comfortable, and we hope that you all were able to kind of feel that level of comfort as well. So we look forward to the next one.
We'll see you guys
And
next time.
we will then catch up with you all then. Hope you have a blessed day, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.